Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Alchemist. Tonight we find ourselves in a forgotten castle where something strange is brewing beneath the surface. Literally, the river that snakes through the foundations is black with rot, thick with centuries of discarded secrets, and tonight it boils. The moon is high, the torches crackle, and somewhere beneath a crooked tower, a solitary figure lights a fire. You probably want to know this. There are easier ways to make gold than what you're about to witness, but none of them smell quite so awful. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere curious, leave your location and your local time in the comments. I always read them. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The flame flickers blue beneath the ancient copper cauldron, catching against centuries of soot baked into the stone walls. Moisture clings to everything. Mold drips from every edge like slow-moving ink. The alchemist doesn't mind. In fact, he insists on it. He once said the damp keeps the cauldron humble. Scholars still argue whether that was metaphor or madness. He stirs the mixture, watching as the river water piped directly from the moat sloshes into the vessel. The liquid is viscous and smells like something that died twice. But that's what makes it special. The rot, the ruin, the centuries of seeped-in regret. He claims they season the spell. One historian called this nonsense. Another claimed to have seen it turn a crow feather into ruby dust. The Academy expelled them both. Outside, the wind moans. A storm is gathering, or maybe just pretending to. This part of the world doesn't get real storms anymore, just sky tantrums and dry thunder. Still, the alchemist pulls his threadbare robe tighter and mutters something in Latin. Or maybe it's Greek. Hard to tell when half the vowels are just breath. Now, here's a detail you'll love. The original cauldron used in this ritual was said to be forged from the armor of 7 dead knights, each slain on the same battlefield, and each buried beneath a yew tree. That's where the alloy gets its name, sevenfold iron. Problem is, it hums whenever gold gets close. A low, nasal sound like a bee trapped in a drawer. If you're trying to be subtle, it's a disaster. But the alchemist likes the hum, says it helps him dream while awake. He adds the powdered horn of a narwhal, or so the jar claims. Honestly, it could be shaved ivory from a bishop's throne for all we know. It smells of salt and regret. The powder vanishes on contact, leaving behind only a swirl of blue that quickly turns brown. Somewhere behind him, a rat sneezes. Now we should mention, this river was never meant to be boiled. Local folklore insists it's alive, though no one agrees what that means. Some say it listens, some say it forgets. A fringe theory posits that it contains trace amounts of a rare compound found only in comets and bad marriages. Others think it's just water, poisoned by centuries of bad plumbing. The alchemist believes it's dreaming. He leans close, nose nearly touching the edge, inhaling the fumes like a sommelier. His eyelids flutter. He smiles. Not because it smells good, it doesn't, but because it smells right. The brew is beginning. The real work starts now. Above, the clock tower clangs once. Midnight, sharp and unforgiving. The castle doesn't notice. Not really. The guards are either drunk or asleep. The royal family is vacationing in the south, far from the cold stone and colder politics. Only the alchemist and the rats remain. And perhaps something else, deep in the pipes. Now a quick historical nugget before we forget. In the late 1300s, it wasn't unheard of for alchemists to be hired secretly by royalty, not to make gold from lead but to clean cursed water, sweeten poisoned wells, or extract truth vapors from stagnant ponds. Some even succeeded. One, in particular, claimed to have turned a plague ditch into an eternal flame. It burned for 11 days before vanishing completely. No one talks about what it smelled like. Tonight's alchemist knows all these tales. He's written the footnotes. But tonight, he wants more than warmth. He wants gold, not just for coin but for proof, for legend, for the page they'll add to history books long after he's dust. The cauldron bubbles. The hum begins. It's soft at first, like a wasp's sigh, but grows steadily louder. Gold is near. Or at least something pretending to be. He reaches for the next ingredient. The bottle is sealed with wax and string, its label lost to time. He sniffs it, winces. Perfect. As he pours it in, the fire flares green, the cauldron hisses, and far beneath the stone floor, something stirs in the river's current, something old. Something that does not like to be boiled. The alchemist doesn't notice. He smiles. He stirs. The passage to the sluice gate isn't exactly a hallway. It's more of a compromise between a tunnel and a forgotten bowel of the castle. Wet stones press in from all sides, and the ceiling is so low that the alchemist must duck every few feet to avoid braining himself on ancient archwork. His sandals squish with every step, not from water, but from whatever the river has been coughing up lately. He carries a lantern in one hand and a bundle of dried fennel in the other. The light flickers, bouncing off the slick walls, revealing mossy inscriptions worn smooth by time. Some are prayers, others are warnings. A few are just crude drawings of someone mooning the clergy. The air grows colder as he descends, and damper too. The castle was built over the river on purpose, they say, not just for access to water, but because the original builder, a duke with a bone obsession, believed flowing water kept demons from settling in the foundations. Historians still argue whether this was actual superstition or just an excuse for cheaper plumbing. As the alchemist rounds a bend, the tunnel widens into a chamber. Pipes crisscross the walls, fat rusted ones that gurgle and hiss as if muttering secrets. Some are cracked and weeping. Others have been patched with old leather or melted wax seals. The entire room smells like fish, iron, and wet dust. In the center, half submerged in muck, is the sluice gate. It's a wheel and chain mechanism, stained black with age. The alchemist kneels beside it, placing his bundle of fennel on the stone floor. He pulls from his sleeve a tiny vial of goose grease and coats his fingers before grabbing the wheel. The grease helps. Last time he tore a knuckle open trying to turn it. The time before that, he swore he saw a leech blink. With a grunt, he twists. The chain rattles like bones in a bag, and slowly the gate begins to rise. Water trickles through the cracks with a reluctant sigh, or a very, very angry mop. He doesn't approach. Not yet. Instead, he walks along the wall, trailing a fingertip across the mouldy stone. There's a place here, yes, just there, where the wall changes texture, a patch of bricks colder than the others. He presses his palm flat, waits, then knocks. The wall answers, a low thud, not an echo, more like a delayed heartbeat. He smiles, still working. Behind that wall is something old, older than the castle, maybe older than the river. A chamber no one speaks of anymore, sealed off by engineers who died mysteriously in the same month. The alchemist isn't foolish enough to open it, yet, but he likes knowing it's there. Some night, maybe. For now, he collects the trickle of water beginning to seep into the side basin, just enough for the second round of distillation. This one must be purified twice, then contaminated once, then blessed, in that order. Candles burned halfway down, no signs of struggle. The only hint left behind, dozens of wind chimes, crafted from bone and shell, hanging along the river tunnel, singing a note that no one has ever been able to replicate. The alchemist has 3 of those chimes in his workspace. He believes they keep his thoughts from wandering. Some scholars say the monks ascended, carried by the river to a higher plane. Others claim they were devoured by what lies in the deepest bend of the current. Fringe theories include time bubbles, cult suicide, or simply a very coordinated retirement. Whatever the truth, the alchemist often listens for their chimes when he walks this part of the tunnel. Tonight he hears only the gurgle of pipes and the sigh of the rising gate. Back near the entrance, the furry heap has moved. Now it's not a heap at all. It's standing, and definitely not a fox. It's the cat. No eyes, no face, really. Just fur, limbs, and a sense of terrible patience. The alchemist freezes. He doesn't speak, doesn't need to. This is not the first time he's seen it. The cat with no eyes comes on the nights that go well. It appears only when the gold is close, when the brew is balanced, when the air thrums with potential. Some say it was the monk's guardian. Others think it's a projection of the alchemist's own mind, a hallucination forged from mercury fumes and isolation. Tonight, the cat simply sits. The alchemist nods once, slowly, then turns back to his tools. He doesn't need its approval, but it's nice to have. The sluice is open now. The flow begins. A steady channel of the river's heart now redirected into the belly of the castle, into the veins of the brewing room above. He'll return to the cauldron shortly. But first, one last thing. He kneels by a small copper vent, shaped like a lion's head, blows softly into it. The lion's eyes glow faintly. Somewhere, very far away, a bell rings once, soft measured. He has announced the ritual's beginning, not to the castle, not to the king, but to those who listen and those who remember what was buried beneath the second aqueduct. He closes the gate halfway, allowing only a thin stream now. Balance. Always balance. Behind him, the cat has disappeared. What's boiling now is just the base. The prologue, as he calls it. The true transformation, the turning of stinking river into shimmering gold, must occur inside the legendary vessel that hums when success is near. And oh, does it hum. Tonight it sits in its velvet-lined box, dormant and smug. The cauldron of 7 metals was forged from precisely measured portions of gold, silver, copper, iron, tin, lead, and antimony, each extracted under different phases of the moon. Legend says it was poured on the 3rd hour of a solar eclipse, stirred with a stag's antler, and cooled in snow from a monastery roof. Modern historians scoff. Impossible, they say. No evidence supports such specificity. And yet the cauldron exists, doesn't it? Glinting like a wound stitched with sunbeams, he lifts it carefully, placing it on a smaller pedestal directly over the secondary flame, blue and whispering. As he sets it down, the vessel emits a faint thrum like the pluck of a cello string underwater, a proper welcome. There's a fringe theory rarely repeated aloud that the cauldron's hum is not metal reacting to proximity with gold, but the cry of something trapped inside the alloy. The alchemist, for the record, believes both might be true. He ladles out the base mixture, straining it through a cloth, embroidered with symbols no one has translated in over 400 years. The liquid turns from murky green to reddish black, and then back to a sickly yellow once inside the sacred vessel. He begins the first clockwise stir, 7 times, always 7. With each rotation, the cauldron pulses louder, softer, louder again. The room itself begins to feel oddly compressed, as though time has cinched its belt a notch tighter. While stirring, he recites from memory, not a spell, not exactly, but a recipe laced with meaning. Each line corresponds to an element, a sacrifice, a failure, and a triumph. He stumbles slightly on the 3rd stanza. That one always brings back her name. He pretends it doesn't. A rat squeals from somewhere high in the rafters. The fire flares red. The alchemist doesn't blink. Now, here's a historical tidbit to warm your boots. In some 15th first century European courts, alchemists were required to present their equipment for regular royal inspection. Cauldrons, in particular, were feared for their potential to harbour spirits or act as scrying devices. He frowns. That's new, he murmurs. Violet was not part of the plan. He consults the sigil-etched tablet beside the fire pit, tracking temperature, burn rate, and timing with a thin sliver of slate. Everything seems correct, except the reflection, which continues to pulse purple and low, like the eye of a very tired god. The cauldron hums louder, then suddenly drops silent, dead silent. The alchemist doesn't move. This has happened before, once, 2 winters ago. That time, the brew solidified mid-boil into a nugget of gold so heavy it cracked the table. But it also took 3 days to stop whispering in Latin. He never repeated that recipe. He leans forward. Still no sound. He whispers something in a tongue that hasn't been used outside of this room in 3 centuries. Nothing. Then thrum. It returns, louder than before, as if it had stepped away for a breath. He releases a sigh, reaches under the table, and retrieves a brass rod tipped with obsidian. Carefully, he stirs again, counterclockwise. This time, the brew darkens but remains fluid. He dips in a strip of goose parchment and pulls it out. Spots of gold shimmer across the damp paper like freckles on royalty. It's working. And just in time, too, a distant bell tolls. Not the tower bell. This one is lower. Rather, the kind you only hear from underground. He stiffens. It's the warning bell. The one rung only when the river changes direction, which of course rivers aren't supposed to do. He rushes to the wall where a crooked pipe leads from the sluice below, places his ear against the copper, Silence. Here is suction. The river isn't flowing in, it's pulling, as if the current is reversing. Something's drawing water back, upstream against gravity, against every rule. He curses softly. Not in fear, but in awe. It's waking up, he says. You see, the alchemist has always suspected the river isn't just water. It's a memory, one buried so deeply in the landscape that it occasionally forgets how to behave. Historians still debate whether such rivers existed, bodies of water with self-regulating patterns based on ancient events. One fringe scholar argued the Thames once tried to drown the Archbishop of Canterbury during a full moon. Her book was burned. The alchemist listens a moment longer, then returns to the cauldron. The gold is forming, not at the bottom as expected, but rising, tiny flecks that dance upward like bubbles. Gravity feels less convincing now. He lowers the flame, pulls out the tuning fork, strikes it against the table, holds it to the brew. It sings back, perfect pitch. He closes his eyes and lets the hum wash over him.
He is very close now.
The cauldron agrees. The river outside has always been a nuisance, too thick to drink, too sour for crops, too sluggish to carry anything worth shipping. But it wasn't always this way. Long before the castle laid its stones over the mud, this same river wound clear through forested hills, its water cold and clean enough to bless newborns in. Back then, they called it Elira's thread, named after a goddess who wept a single tear every spring and filled the valley with life. Those who remembered that time, what few remained, claimed the water changed the moment the first blood was spilled on its banks. A hunting accident, some said. A deliberate sacrifice, whispered others. No one could agree on the source of the corruption, but everyone agreed on the result. The river darkened. It began to coil like a snake, instead of winding like a ribbon. Livestock grew hesitant to drink from it. Fish emerged already half-rotted, and worst of all, the birds stopped nesting anywhere near it. The castle was built anyway. The ruling family at the time believed they could discipline the river as if it were an unruly horse. They paved channels, redirected flows, even placed iron nails in the riverbed to anchor it to man's will. For a time this seemed to work, then people began disappearing. It started with the lowest folk, ferrymen, night watchmen, chimney sweeps, whose jobs kept them near the waterline. They'd vanish silently, often with their boots still on the bank, and no sign of a struggle. Later came the soldiers, the cooks, even a knight once, drawn from his post during a moonless watch, and never seen again. One squire, found days later, could only speak in riddles involving reeds and teeth. The alchemist knows these stories. He's copied the scrolls himself, annotated the margins with red ink and uneasy questions. One such note reads, "What if the water remembers?" Now standing beside the humming cauldron, he watches the mixture begin to shift in hue, from gold to amber, to something almost like molten sunlight. The flickering flame gives the brew a depth it doesn't truly have, like a shadow cast on a wall that shouldn't be there. Then there it is again. Movement. Something rises. It doesn't break the surface. Not quite, but the alchemist sees it. A shimmer of shape beneath the gold. A spiral. It's the newest theory among certain esoteric circles, that emotion, not metal, is the base of all transformation, that the right sadness, properly brewed, can harden into sapphire, that guilt, given structure, can spin into silver thread, and gold, they say, is just shame refined. The alchemist believes this completely. Tonight he's using the guilt of the river. He opens the logbook to page 171, where notes from his last river experiment curl inward from water damage. One line is underlined twice. Boil until it begs. He stirs. The cauldron hisses. And then, behind him, a soft plink. He turns. Something small and gold has landed on the floor. It's a coin, but not one he's seen before. He picks it up. The design is strange, too sharp, too modern, not minted by any known kingdom. Not even a currency from this era. A crowned skull adorns one side. The other, a bridge broken in 3 places. He frowns. He knows every coin from the last 6 dynasties. He keeps samples in velvet drawers. This one isn't from here, which means the river isn't just remembering the past, it's remembering futures. There's a thud behind the wall, low, like a cough through stone. The alchemist puts the coin down and returns to the brew. Time is thin now. Threads are crossing. He must stabilize the mixture before it shifts too far forward, or worse, backward. He retrieves a small pouch of dried crocus petals, tosses them in. The brew fizzes, momentarily turning green, then gold again. Better. A historical note for the curious. During the 12th century, several scholars proposed that rivers could serve as records, liquid libraries they called them. According to these forgotten texts, if one knew how to read the flow and boil of a river, one could trace the emotional history of a kingdom. Most of these theories were dismissed as lunacy. The scholars were often imprisoned, and one famously turned to stone during a thunderstorm. It's soft, malformed, still unripe. He'll need to stir again. Harder this time, but first he marks it down. Marble at 4th simmer. Imperfect. Eyed. Then, just as he returns to the table, the cauldron goes still, utterly still. Not a bubble. Not a hum. It's the pause before a decision. He leans in again, and the water rises, not in a boil but in a slow, intentional bulge, like it's standing up to look him in the face. The gold has taken shape, but so has the curse, and it's watching him. He doesn't blink. The surface of the brew domes upward, a shimmering lens of gold and memory swelling silently, held in tension like a drop of dew on the edge of a blade. The alchemist slowly sets down his ladle, both hands now free. He spreads his fingers wide above the cauldron, not touching, never touching, but coaxing, inviting. The water should be dancing, evaporating, cowering beneath fire, but tonight it resists. It pushes back. This is the part the books don't mention. See, most records of alchemy, especially the historical ones, speak in absolutes. Mix A with B, heat to 137 degrees, add dragon ash and poof. But the deeper texts, the rare ones, hint at something more volatile. Alchemy as negotiation. The idea that the materials have agency. That transformation is a consented act between substance and soul, and right now, the river is saying no. He mutters a low phrase, the language breathy and uneven. The air in the chamber ripples slightly, as if the stone walls are listening. He repeats the phrase, slower. This time, the surface trembles and begins to sink. Good, but not good enough. Suddenly, pressed, a sharp spray of steam hisses upward, scalding the underside of his wrist. He recoils, biting back a curse. Not because of the pain, it's minor, but because steam should not rise sideways. He snatches up a lens stone, an orb of volcanic glass cut flat on one side, and holds it above the cauldron. Through it, the brew doesn't look like water at all. It looks like glass being blown in reverse. Smooth in some places, violently cratered in others, patterns swirl beneath the surface. Teeth, spines, bridges, stairwells, none last longer than a blink. But he recognizes them, their memories, from the river. Some of them his own. He sees the toothless monk who once sold him a fermented eel claiming it could sing. He sees a palace maid stepping into the river barefoot, never resurfacing. He sees a child, his child, whom he hasn't seen in 15 years, laughing in sunlight near these very waters before they turned black. The river is bleeding memory now, not just gold. It's too soon. He steps back and adjusts the flame. Less heat, less pressure. This needs a coaxing hand, not brute force. The scent changes. Up until now, the room has smelled like boiled iron and algae. Now it smells like cider and wet leaves. The kind of scent that clings to old gloves and deeper autumns. It means the water is softening, still dangerous, but pliable. He drops a sliver of obsidian into the brew. The stone floats for a moment, then spins and finally sinks. That's the signal he needed. He reaches under the table for the iron bell, no bigger than a walnut, and rings it once. The sound is so small, it shouldn't carry, but it does, through the stones, through the pipes, through the river. It's not a bell for ears, it's a bell for what waits in water. A historian from the Black Chapel once claimed that certain tones, when struck in proximity to cursed elements, could temporarily flatten spiritual pressure, like smoothing wrinkled silk with a warm hand. He was laughed out of his post for using the phrase emotional ironing, but the alchemist kept the paper anyway. It made sense to him. The brew quivers, then sighs. He approaches again and gently stirs, once clockwise, once counter. The gold returns, not violently this time, but like morning light through shutters, gentle, intentional. A bead forms on the surface. Then another, and another. Each one perfectly round, each one no heavier than a prayer. He lifts them out with a long-handled sieve, laying them in a copper tray carved with protective runes. It's working, despite the river's resistance, despite the curse that still simmers beneath. He moves quickly but carefully, each scoop a test of patience. He hums a song from his youth, one his mother used to sing while steeping herbs. He doesn't realize it, but the tune stabilizes the bubbles. Now for the next stage, distillation. He lifts a silver coil from the wall and dips one end into the brew. The other leads into a small vial made from sapphire glass, an inheritance from his mentor, who swore it once held tears from the Pope's falcon. The brew must be siphoned in a slow spiral, separating truth from memory. He turns the crank. Liquid gold begins to thread its way down the spiral tube. The room fills with a sound, not unlike rain falling gently on stone. It's beautiful, until the hissing returns, not from the cauldron, from the walls. He glances to the stone where a faint crack has opened, trickling river water onto the floor. At first it's just a leak, then it begins to boil on its own. He freezes. This is not part of the ritual. The river is boiling itself, without fire, as if mimicking what he's doing, as if learning. A very fringe theory rarely published suggests that elements subjected to enough magical trauma become observational mimics. That is, they copy the processes done to them, even in isolation, like water remembering how to freeze in fire. If the river is mimicking the gold transmutation, then the castle's foundations are in danger of becoming unstable, liquid wealth. Not metaphorically, literally. He dashes to the shelf, grabs a tiny jar of red sand. Only a pinch is left. It's all he has. This sand is from the singing dunes, granules that vibrate just enough to cancel chaotic frequencies. He sprinkles it into the crack. The hissing stops. For now, he returns to the vial. The gold is nearly done threading through, and yet the temperature in the room drops. He can see his breath now. He turns slowly. The cauldron has gone still again. Only this time, it's bulging. Something inside is rising, not the liquid, the metal itself. As if the cauldron is swelling with pride or pressure, he grabs his tongs, ready to remove it from the flame. But the vessel is glowing from the inside. The 7 metals have fused unintentionally. He whispers the fail-safe word, just in case. Then, from behind him, a purring, but wrong, like a cat breathing underwater. He doesn't turn around. He knows what it is. The cat with no eyes has returned, and it's watching, and so is the river. The purring deepens. It slinks through the air, curling around the alchemist's ankles like a draft of smoke. The sound isn't coming from the floor. It's vibrating inside the walls, resonating through pipes, stone, and marrow. The alchemist slowly sets the silver tongs on the table beside the humming cauldron. He doesn't turn. He doesn't need to. He already knows what he'll see. Still, he waits, because the cat with no eyes doesn't like sudden movement, nor acknowledgement. It appears when it wishes, observes what it must, and leaves once satisfied. Most nights, it simply watches from a beam or perches on the edge of a work table, tail flicking to some unseen rhythm. Tonight, however, it speaks, not in words, in images. They come all at once, pressed into his mind like thumbprints into wax. A burned bridge, a child floating faced, down in golden water. The king laughing with gold dust on his lips. The cat curled around the crown like a halo, and behind it all, the river open like a mouth, swallowing stars. The alchemist shudders. The visions vanish as quickly as they came, like dreams snapped shut. He turns. There it is. Perched on a shelf, right between the powder blue jar of charred yarrow and a pewter bust of Queen Belladine, who, as you may recall, once outlawed mirrors because hers whispered unkind things. The cat looks the same as always. Sleek fur like oil on parchment, too many whiskers, and no eyes. Just blank skin where sockets should be, smooth and unbroken. And yet it sees. Oh, it sees. The alchemist offers it a shallow nod. "You're early tonight," he says softly. The cat tilts its head, as if amused. Its tail sweeps once, slow and deliberate. Now here's a curious historical morsel. In some 14th century bestiaries, there's mention of a creature known as Cacus Falaise, the blind cat, said to appear in places of transition, especially when gold is forged from pain. Most thought it a metaphor, a warning against greed. But several first-hand accounts describe its unmistakable purr, always accompanied by a shift in air pressure and the scent of singed myrrh. Guess what the alchemist smells right now? He returns to the cauldron, careful not to break the cat's line of sight. The brew is calmer now but thicker. The gold has begun to develop weight, not just physical but presence. He can feel it in his bones like standing too close to thunder. He dips a measuring spoon into the surface and lifts it slowly. The drop hangs suspended like honey, too heavy to fall. Then it drops with a metallic clink into the collection tray. Success, almost. He marks another line in the grimoire. 5th stage yield achieved. Presence noted. Cat present. River, mimicking. Caution. A new sound emerges, barely audible, but unmistakable. A high-pitched whistle, like wind through cracked teeth. It's coming from the stone vent near the back wall, the lionhead vent, the one he used to signal the ritual's start. He walks toward it slowly, kneels, presses his ear to the cool metal, whispers, not in Latin. It's not gold. It never was. He recoils, grabs a hammer from the wall and strikes the vent hard. Once, the whispers stop. For now, he doesn't meet the cat's gaze again. Instead, he busies himself, focuses on the next stage, cooling. The liquid gold must be poured into the stone mold, a slab carved with ancient glyphs depicting the cycle of water, rot, and resurrection. The mold is warm to the touch, always has been. No one knows why. Some say the heat is the last breath of a sunken sun, trapped during an eclipse. Others think it's just old enchantment lingering like wine in an empty cup. The alchemist positions the cauldron carefully, tilts it with a slow and reverent motion. The gold flows smoothly, but partway through the pour the stream bends. Not much, just a slight deviation, as if pulled by an unseen hand. He adjusts, tries again. It bends again. Not gravity, not heat, but choice. The gold doesn't want to rest in the mold. It wants to rise. He stops pouring, sets the cauldron down, stares at the golden stream swirling in the mold. It's forming shapes again. This time they stay longer. He sees eyes, not cat eyes, human eyes, watching, blinking slowly beneath the surface. One opens wider, and in the center of its pupil, his own face. The cat with no eyes growls, a deep, earthy sound that seems far too large for its body. The river has overreached. The brew is no longer under control. He grabs the binding salts, crystals mined from the caves of Briaron, infused with binding prayers and crushed regret. Tosses a handful across the mold. The surface flashes, then hardens. The eyes vanish. But the room tilts slightly, as if the castle itself is disoriented. The cat leaps down from the shelf and lands silently. It pads toward the mold, sniffs once, then sits. If it approves, it doesn't show it. The alchemist wipes sweat from his brow, then checks the cauldron, still half full, which is odd, because he only poured a third. He lifts it. It's heavier, impossible. He dips a finger. The surface is smooth, but the cauldron hums in two pitches now, one low, one not meant for human ears. He marks the page again, cauldron now jewel-toned. Gold may be folding into itself. Vessel integrity uncertain. River whispering in first person. Feline highly reactive. He turns back to the cat. It's now lying across the mold, tail flicking slowly. He kneels beside it. Whispers, "What do I do if it's alive?" The cat doesn't respond, but its ears twitch once. Then, in the silence that follows, the river outside makes a sound it hasn't made in centuries. It laughs. A wet, bubbling, joyless laugh. And the alchemist realizes something that makes the hairs on his neck rise. The water isn't just remembering, it's rehearsing. The laugh fades, but it leaves behind a pressure in the air, like a song that ended in the middle of its chorus. The alchemist stays kneeling beside the cat with no eyes, hands limp in his lap, trying to steady his breath. His chest rises and falls in slow, deliberate cadence, as if afraid to disrupt the tension now crackling across the room like thin ice. The mold has hardened. The gold rests within it, solid and unyielding, yet still warm, too warm. The center pulses faintly, not with heat. The king even laughed about it, calling it a divine upgrade that lasted until the other teeth began to follow suit. Then his tongue stiffened, his breath turned to sulfur, and one morning the dentist ran screaming from the castle, holding a tooth still twitching in a pair of tongs. The king hasn't smiled since. Historians still argue whether it was transmutation or a curse transmitted through ceremonial wine. Either way, the alchemist remembers the dentist's warning, scrawled on a napkin handed off during a public execution. Gold wants more. Back in the chamber, he gazes again at the cauldron. The hum continues, but now it has an undertone, like an echo layered beneath a deeper sound. It's not vibration anymore. It's invitation. He steps back, just slightly, and picks up the slate tablet from earlier. He reviews the numbers, temperatures, stir counts, ingredient ratios. Everything adds up, but it shouldn't, because the amount of gold he has now, what lies in the mold and what remains in the cauldron, exceeds the mass of material he began with. It's multiplying. That's not alchemy. That's hunger. He circles the room, whispering stabilizing phrases under his breath. The air tastes different now, less like steam and metal, more like orchids and ashes. He glances at the cat, still curled on the mold, but its fur now shifts like oil under moonlight, as if it too is transforming. He doesn't speak. Instead, he moves to the far shelf and opens a drawer sealed with wax and a tiny silver skull. Inside is a bundle wrapped in silk. He unwraps it carefully, revealing page 437 of his master's journal. He wasn't supposed to have this. He wasn't even supposed to see it. But after the fire, after the lab and the lecture hall, and the inexplicable crater, he dug through the rubble until he found it. The page is cracked with heat, edges curled and scorched, ink smudged by what he can only guess were tears or blood. The title reads, On Emergent Material Consciousness in Alchemic Conversions of Negative Flowing Waters. Catchy. Below it, his master had written only 5 things. You may craft gold, but you must earn mercy. The vessel must never hum in thirds. Do not look directly at the bloom. The alchemist stares at the last line. There was no page 438. Not in the rubble, not in the archives, not even in the ash samples. He places page 437 gently beside the cauldron. The hum continues. But faintly now, a third note begins to emerge. A high, whistling overtone, like wind through harp strings. He stiffens. The vessel is humming in thirds. He's gone too far. The brew is approaching awareness. Fringe alchemical theory warns against this. When a substance under ritual refinement develops pattern-based responses, when it begins to anticipate the next step, it's no longer a brew, it's a being, and this one is listening. He moves fast, covers the mold with a cloth soaked in forget-me-not tincture, an old suppressive measure meant to keep memories from solidifying. It won't hold long, but it might buy him a few minutes. The cat leaps down and disappears behind the cabinet without a sound. Typical. The cauldron shivers. A droplet of gold rises from its center and hovers mid-air, weightless, quivering. It doesn't fall. It doesn't cool. It watches. He raises his hand and blows gently across it. The droplet elongates, then curls downward like a question mark. He lowers his hand. Not yet, he whispers. It remains suspended, waiting. He knows what's happening. The gold is trying to form a bloom. He's only seen it once before, briefly in his master's lab right before the screaming started. A bloom is what happens when a material achieves consciousness and attempts self-replication through form. It's beautiful and lethal. But worse, it remembers. The hum stops. The third pitch vanishes. Silence. The gold settles. The cauldron cools. He collapses onto the stool beside the mold, breathing hard. The cat with no eyes reappears, brushing against his leg. For once it makes no sound. He looks at the cauldron, still half full. But the surface is calm now. No ripples, no eyes. No questions, for the moment. And then, a quiet tink. He looks down. Another coin. Same strange emblem, same broken bridge. But this time, it lands heads up. The crowned skull grins at him. He blinks. Because this coin has his initials, he doesn't touch the coin. Not at first. It sits there on the stone floor, perfectly still, perfectly smug, the initials on its edge unmistakable. His initials, not engraved in any style known to the Royal Mint or the alchemical guilds, but in his own hand, his handwriting, curved just the way he signs off pages in his grimoire. It's unmistakable and impossible. Coins don't sign themselves. He leans closer, but not too close. The last time he got this near to enchanted metal, he dreamt in reverse for a week. The coin doesn't pulse, doesn't glow, just waits. He remembers something his master once said, spoken during one of those long, nervous walks along the frozen canal after a failed transmutation. If the work ever signs back, you're not working alone anymore. He brushes the coin into a small lee dish using a crow feather and covers it quickly with a glass dome. Containment. Step 1. The cauldron of 7 metals is quiet now. Too quiet. He checks it again. The mixture still swirls, slow and golden, but its surface is flat, calm. It almost looks peaceful. That is, until he notices the glyphs etched into the rim of the cauldron. They're glowing faintly, not with heat or magic, but with language. He squints. Words are forming, very old ones, in a script that predates most known alphabets. He's seen fragments of it before, burned into tree bark during a thunder ritual, carved into a cow's rib unearthed near the Black Ridge, but never this many lines at once, never so coherent, and never in his own name. He scribbles into the grimoire, transcribing quickly before the light fades. He doesn't know what the words mean yet, but he knows they matter. They always matter. Just then, a soft flutter. A page from the alchemist's journal flips itself over, as if caught by an invisible breeze. Page 12. His notes on the monks of the Hollow Reeds. He hasn't looked at this in years. He had all but written it off as castle myth. Monks who claimed the river whispered truths, who used it to predict crop failures and royal deaths, who insisted that water could be taught manners if you chanted politely. But one line now catches his attention, underlined in ochre ink. Should the water begin to answer you in rhyme, it's no longer safe to speak. He looks around. The room is still. He listens. Nothing rhyming yet. He closes the book. And suddenly, shink, a drawer near the window opens by itself. He freezes. The drawer contains nothing of magical importance. Just scraps of parchment, some dried herbs, a cracked compass, and an old, partially translated scroll he'd found years ago, wedged between 2 stones in the castle's foundation. It was mostly illegible. Just a few legible lines here and there, and a crude ink drawing of a person vomiting up a gold crown. He never gave it much thought. Until now, because as he approaches the drawer, the parchment is glowing, dimly, like a dying ember. He lifts it carefully. The glow fades, but the ink has rearranged itself. The illegible lines have changed. The gaps have filled. Now in neat and curling letters, a message: not all gold must be spent. Some gold must be buried. He stares. That wasn't there before, not even close. The scroll shudders in his hands. Just once, as if it sighed, then it falls limp and dull again. This is beyond transmutation now. It's dialogue. Something has crossed over, and worse, it knows him. A scratching sound snaps his head around. Behind the cauldron, a small copper box is rattling. He didn't open it. He didn't even remember putting it on the shelf. Inside is the preserved eye of a saint, or so the label says. He retrieved it years ago from a sunken reliquary, one of the only things that didn't immediately rot when dragged from the blackened silt. It's supposed to be inert, holy but inactive, yet now it blinks, twice, and then turns to look at the coin. The glass dome cracks, a thin line almost invisible, but it's there. He rushes forward, sprinkling iron dust around the base, a protective ring. For now it holds. For now. He turns to the cauldron. Again, always returning to it, like a tongue to a sore tooth. The mixture is moving now. Slow circles, but not in any natural direction. He checks the flame. Steady. He checks the foundation. Stable. So the rotation isn't caused by heat, nor by tilt. It's voluntary. The mixture is choosing to spin, and it's forming a pattern. Not random. Not aesthetic. It's drawing letters, in spirals, one large enough to read. Ask. He steps back. His pulse is loud in his ears. The gold is asking for a question. He hesitates. This isn't how the ritual is supposed to go. The recipe ends with cooling, forming, and casting. It does not include conversation, but this isn't the same gold anymore. This isn't just transmuted matter. It's river water, fire-kissed, memory-laced, and possibly aware, and it's waiting for him. He clears his throat, feels silly, then asks, gently, "What are you?" The cauldron bubbles once, just once. Then a word forms in the liquid metal, each letter rising like breath on glass. You. His mouth goes dry. He reaches for the bell to end the ritual, but his hand stops, frozen. His body won't move. Only his eyes. The cauldron pulses again. Letters reassemble. New word, trade. Then another, truth. And finally, gold. The river has named its price. And now it waits. The room is heavy now, not with silence, but with expectation. It's the kind of pressure you feel right before a thunderclap, or when someone stares at you through a keyhole. The alchemist remains frozen, not by magic exactly, but by the eerie rightness of the moment. As if this is not a surprise, but a scene he's lived before and forgotten. Trade, truth, gold. He tastes the words in his mind like bitter roots. The river, through the brew, wants a transaction, not a gift, not a spell, a deal. And the price? Truth, which, as any proper alchemist knows, is the rarest base element, trickier than lead, more volatile than quicksilver, and impossible to synthesize. He sits slowly, releasing control of his limbs. They move now, but like puppets on cautious strings. He places his hands on the table and considers 100 truths flicker through his mind. He knows that not all of them are real, not all of them are his. But one rises to the surface, an old one, buried deep, ugly and raw. He pushes it away. Not yet. Instead, he stares at the glyphs still etched into the rim of the cauldron. They've stopped glowing, but the impressions remain, as if the metal has become textured by memory. He flips through his grimoire, hunting for patterns. And there, on page 88, in faded blue ink, rivers may demand what kings cannot. When the water asks for truth, beware the truths it gives in return. That line had always confused him. Now it makes perfect sense. He stands again, moving toward the wall where 3 chains hang, relics from the vanished monks. Each chain once held a bell, a bowl, or a bone. Only one remains intact, a small chime, carved from river quartz, suspended from a copper hook. He rings it. The tone is light, almost pleasant, but beneath it, barely audible, another tone rings back, not in echo, in reply. The letters form once more truth. He exhales through his nose. The cat with no eyes watches from the rafters, tail curled neatly around its paws. Its ears twitch slightly. He closes his eyes and speaks. One time he says softly, "I could have saved her." He doesn't say who. He doesn't need to. The cauldron bubbles, once. Twice. The surface flattens. A moment of quiet, then letters return, accepted, followed by witness. The wall opposite the cauldron shimmers, not visually. It's more like a change in temperature you can see. A shimmer like heat haze, except cold. A scene begins to unfold across the wall like spilled ink reassembling itself. And it's not just any memory, it's his. It's the night of the drowning. A girl, 8, maybe 9, stands at the river's edge, calling to something just out of sight. He watches, frozen, unable to interfere. And then the slip, the scream, the hand reaching, and not moving fast enough. He was there, but he didn't jump. The alchemist's throat tightens. He turns away from the wall. The memory fades. He expected pain. Instead, he feels relief, because the river has taken the truth as payment. And now, the gold within the cauldron changes. It no longer looks like metal. It looks like glass from beneath a frozen lake, clear, dense, and brimming with shadows. He leans in, sees shapes, people, faces. They shift and ripple, but he recognizes them all. Failed apprentices, lost friends, Even the king's old dog, who vanished the week before the moat turned sour, one face lingers longer than the rest. His mentor, the man who gave him page 437, and suddenly the voice returns. Not from the river, not from the air, from inside his own mind. But not his voice. You've brewed memory into form. Now drink what you've made. He reels back. No, the cauldron pulses. Drink. He considers this is beyond gold now, beyond currency. He's on the edge of remembrance made solid, a substance more valuable than any coin. He reaches for the tasting spoon. A narrow silver dipper, once used to sample decoctions for poisons. He's always cleaned it meticulously. He dips it in, lifts. The liquid is warm, but not hot. Heavy, but not thick. He sniffs it. It smells like wet parchment and juniper, and something he hasn't smelled since childhood. Lye soap and rosemary bread. His mother. He drinks. Only a drop. The world tilts, just slightly, and he's somewhere else. Not physically, but within, a corridor. Long, narrow, lined with doors, each one marked with a date. He approaches the first, tries the handle. It opens. And he sees the classroom, the broken chalk, the night he chose alchemy over diplomacy, the disappointment in her eyes. He closes the door, tries another, the apprentice's hands, shaking, pleading, the wrong vial given. A mistake, his mistake. Door after door, truth after truth. No illusions, no edits, only raw, uncut memory. And when he opens the final door, he's back in the lab, the spoon still in hand, the cauldron now empty. The gold is gone, transformed, not into coins, but into clarity. He looks down at the glass dome. The coin with his initials is gone. In its place, a small folded scrap of parchment. He opens it. A single word, written in trembling gold ink. Enough. The cat with no eyes meows. A rare sound, almost a purr, almost a sigh, and then silence. But deep beneath the castle, the river begins to flow forward again. The river flows forward, not with speed, but with purpose, as if it had been winding up all these years for this moment. Pipes groan softly in the walls, relieved perhaps to carry something clean for once. The scent of algae and mildew that always hung in the alchemist's workshop now begins to fade, replaced by the faint smell of myrrh and warm bread. He stands very still, unsure whether to trust it. Rivers don't change direction, not on their own, and certainly not for him. He eyes the cauldron. Its bottom is coated in a thin crystalline glaze, transparent gold, solidified into a perfect spiral. No bubbling, no humming, just stillness. The mould on the table remains covered in its forget-me-not cloth, undisturbed. For now, he turns to the wall where the lion head vent is carved. No whispering, no smoke. The pipes are quiet. Even the cat with no eyes is nowhere to be seen. And then, gurgle, from the cauldron. He doesn't move, but every nerve in his body leans forward. Just a single bubble, then silence again. He steps closer, peers into the glaze. It's not glaze, it's surface tension. The gold never cooled. It paused. A bead rises. Just one. Slowly. He stares, expecting another message, another demand. But instead, it forms into something small and strange. A ring, no markings. No sigils, just gold, warm and unbroken. It lands gently on the rim of the cauldron with a soft ting. He picks it up, feeling its heat, its weight, light but intentional. It slides onto his finger perfectly. Too perfectly. He blinks, and the visions begin again, but not like before. This time, they're not his. The river is showing its memories. Centuries pass in flashes. A forest lush and wet. Wolves howling at a full moon over clear waters. Children swimming. Until him, the visions stop. He staggers, gripping the table to stay upright. His mind reels, not from horror, but from understanding. The river was never cursed. It was wounded, and tonight it finally remembered how to heal. Or perhaps it chose to. Not religious, just a spiral, carved perfectly into the disc, like a fossil of thought. He brushes a finger across it. The seal crumbles, turns to dust, and vanishes. That's when he hears it, a voice from the walls, not a whisper this time, clear, soft, feminine. You've taken. Now return. He looks down. The ring glows faintly. He understands. One final step remains. He walks to the back wall where the water first trickled in, back to the sluice. The vent hisses open with no effort. The river waits, not roaring, not pulling, just waiting. He removes the ring, holds it in both hands, then places it gently into the shallow stream of water flowing past the stonework. The ring sinks slowly. As it touches the water, the surface flares. A pulse travels downstream, a shimmer of light and gold, vanishing into the dark. Then, stillness. The ring is gone. And the river says nothing, because it is done. Now, here's your historical curiosity. During a royal census in 1426, an entire village was found abandoned, with tables still set and fires still warm, right beside this same river. Not a single body. Only a ring resting on a church step, untouched by time. Scholars debate whether the village relocated, disappeared, or never existed at all. But one line in a forgotten footnote simply reads, "Where the gold ends, peace begins." He steps back from the water, back into the room. The cauldron of 7 metals is cold now, truly cold. For the first time in years, its hum has stopped. Its job is done. He begins cleaning, methodically, reverently, tools into drawers, bottles sealed, chalkboards wiped. There's no mess, not really, just energy. The kind that lingers. He wipes the condensation from the cracked mirror. His reflection looks lighter, not younger, just unburdened. He nods to himself, then to the mirror. He nods to himself, then to the mirror. Then, for reasons he doesn't entirely understand, he whispers, "Thank you." The mirror fogs slightly in response. He extinguishes the flame under the cauldron with a damp rag soaked in rosewater. Hold, the room darkens. Outside a bird sings, the first in years, and somewhere deep beneath the castle, the river glides gently over stone, goldless and whole, for the first time in centuries. The alchemist doesn't sleep that night. He doesn't sit, doesn't eat, doesn't sip from the comforting flask of mulled blackberry wine tucked behind his grimoire. He simply moves. Not frantic or fearful, more like a man who's just stepped out of a dream too vivid to forget, and is now quietly sweeping up its footprints. He washes the tools first, each vial, each spoon, every stir rod, the silver sieve, the bone-tipped tongs. He dips them one by one into a basin of mint and violet solution. It hisses faintly, cleansing away the gold traces, the memory film. These are ritual tools. After all, they've touched something not meant to be touched, and they must be soothed. He hums softly as he works. Not a song, really. More of a lullaby in reverse. Something to coax the tools out of dreaming. Behind him, the lion vent exudes only silence. Still, he glances at it every so often, just in case. With the tools cleaned, he turns to the cauldron, now cold. Inert. The 7 metals fused and stable. And yet, it feels heavier, not in weight but in presence. Like it now knows things, carries them. He places a hand gently on its rim. "You're full," he murmurs. But not with gold. He traces the faint impressions still etched into the metal. Some of the glyphs remain, ghost-like, as though the cauldron wants to remember. He makes a decision. He lifts it, carefully, and carries it to a hollow beneath the stairs. He covers it with a thick cloth soaked in black lavender oil, then stacks 3 iron tomes on top. Let it sleep. Let it settle. Next, he takes the grimoire and adds a final note to page 437. Trade complete. Bloom averted. Memory transmuted. River quiet. Cat vanished. Seal undone. Truth spoken. Gold returned. Result. Peace. He hesitates, then adds, no measurable wealth gained, but worth immeasurable. He closes the book, locks it, slides it into its hiding place behind the loose stone under the work table. This knowledge isn't ready for copying. Not yet. He steps outside for the first time in hours, maybe days. He's not sure anymore. The castle courtyard is eerily still, just the hush of early dawn, and the scent of wet stone and turned soil. Something's changed in the air. Not a big thing, just enough to breathe a little deeper. He notices something peculiar. The river flowing beside the castle now doesn't stink. He approaches the bank, squats, dips a finger in. It's cold, clean. He blinks. There are fish in it, tiny ones, silver and twitching like sparks. He lets out a soft, surprised laugh. There haven't been fish in this river for over 100 years, not real ones. A movement catches his eye across the bank. A figure, slender, hooded, barefoot. Just nods to the empty space. Thank you, he thinks. Whether to the river, the figure, the cat, or all three, he doesn't know. He heads back inside. His workshop feels different now. Lighter, quieter, as though something has left it. But on the table he finds something he didn't place there. A scroll tied with river grass. He opens it. A list of names. His apprentices, each one crossed out, except the last, her name, the one who drowned, not crossed out, just written in gold. He stares at it for a long time, then folds the scroll gently, places it in the reliquary chest beneath the bone chimes. He doesn't need to understand why, only that she's remembered. It glints off the iron weather vane, and the alchemist, he smiles. Because somewhere from the far corner of the chamber, a faint purr echoes once, and then is gone. The next evening, the alchemist wakes not to bells, or bubbling mixtures, or cryptic cat-like whispers, but to birdsong. Real birds, chirping. It stops him in his tracks. He hasn't heard that sound near the castle since the early plague years, when people still sang lullabies into the wind and hoped the river would carry them somewhere better. He steps out onto the narrow balcony just off the tower stairwell, gripping the weathered railing as the late dusk light stretches across the valley. The river, yes, the same river that once stank of rot and whispered names through vents, glimmers now like polished glass. The current moves like it remembers how. He laughs, softly, like a man surprised by kindness. Then the bell rings. Not a magical one. Not from the cauldron. Just the old rusted brass bell above the north gate, meant to signal a visitor, which is odd, because the castle hasn't had visitors in months. Years, really, unless you count tax collectors and the occasional royal inspector with a nervous moustache and a limp sense of humour. The alchemist descends the spiral stairs, robe trailing like shadow stuff behind him. He opens the heavy oak door with its 3 mismatched locks and peers out into the evening fog. A messenger stands there. Young, pale, slightly out of breath, clutching a scroll case wrapped in waxed leather and stamped with the king's sigil, a crowned tooth. The alchemist almost groans. He takes the scroll, nods. The boy scampers off, grateful not to have to wait. Back in his workshop, he breaks the seal. The letter is brief, too brief, to the alchemist of the North River Tower. The king has learned of your recent experiments. And less in courts filled with velvet and powdered expectations. He knows what the king wants: gold that speaks, gold that remembers, gold that glows with its own agenda. And the king will dig up the riverbed with iron spoons if he thinks it will bring him wealth. But the river gave him something else. Not wealth, not power, understanding, and maybe a second chance. He paces the workshop, collecting notes, tucking away ingredients. He hides the sapphire vial, stores the bone chimes behind loose bricks, seals the lion vent with a ring of binding salts. One by one, he erases the trail, because he knows what comes next. The bricks shift, silently, revealing a staircase. He's never gone down it before. He doesn't bring a lantern, only a flask of quiet tea and a pouch of star salt. He descends, step by step, into the cold belly beneath the castle. The smell changes. No longer decay. Now it smells of clay, of dust, of stories too tired to be told again. At the bottom he finds the chamber, just as described in the burnt half-page found folded in the broken pipe years ago. The floor is a spiral, not drawn, but built. Massive stones shaped and set with obsessive care. And in the center, a pool, still, black, reflecting nothing. He kneels, pours a pinch of star salt into it. The surface doesn't ripple. It listens. He speaks. I have returned the gold. I've spoken the truth. The bloom is undone. What now? The water doesn't speak back, but something shifts. A sense, like a door unlocking far away. He looks up. Carved into the ceiling are words he's never seen before, but he knows exactly what they mean. Begin again, he smiles. Not because he understands what's next, but because he doesn't. And maybe this time, that's the point. Above him, the castle begins to hum, not with magic or menace, but with life. Somewhere the cat with no eyes stretches on a windowsill, and the river keeps flowing, forward, always forward. When the alchemist climbs the staircase back to his workshop, dawn is already bleeding through the eastern windows. The light is soft, newborn sunlight that hasn't quite made up its mind. It glances off glass bottles and copper scales, filters through cobwebs that nobody dares clear, and rests briefly on the old chain near the rafters where the cat with no eyes used to perch. Used to. The spot is empty now. He doesn't expect it to return. Cats, especially the kind without eyes, are like consequences. They show up only when summoned by certain choices, and he's made his. He sits at his old workbench and opens a fresh notebook. The pages are stiff and slightly yellowed, but clean, untouched. He dips his quill and writes, very slowly, Experiment 0001A. Post-transmutation state, stable. Memory feedback loop, closed. Subject, self, condition, hopeful. He chuckles at that last word. Hopeful? It's been a long time since he's felt that particular flavor of nonsense. He pauses to sip the tea he brought down to the spiral chamber. It's gone tepid, but it tastes like warmth and dusk with a strange hint of rosemary and apple. He squints at the mug. No apple in the recipe. Of course, the river's parting gift. One last memory, he lets it pass. After a while, he gets up and wanders to the wall of jars, the apothecary cathedral, as his third apprentice once called it. Each jar, box and bottle is neatly labelled powdered flint, fox bile, lunar salt, widow's milk. Things no sane person would use, unless they had reason to believe reality might be persuaded, just a little. But now, most of them feel unnecessary. He begins removing the dustiest containers, ones he hasn't touched since the reign of the last king, or maybe the one before that. Hard to keep track when monarchs keep dying of mysterious coin-related conditions. He empties each jar slowly, whispering thanks to whatever strange substances made their way into his work. He doesn't throw them away. He scatters them into the garden outside the castle, a plot long overgrown with ivy and poppies, not to destroy them, to free them. Inside, the workshop feels less crowded, not just in space, but in intention. Because here's the thing about alchemy, they never put in the textbooks. Eventually, you stop trying to change things and start trying to understand why they wanted changing in the first place. He sets aside 3 tools, the ladle, the scale, and the old stirring rod made from brass and envy. These he will keep. The rest he begins to box away, not for safekeeping, but for offering. You see, there's a monastery 2 ridges over, newer, less haunted. The monks there keep bees and argue about the colour of souls. They've asked him to visit a dozen times, always refused. Too busy, too cursed, too close to something dangerous. But now he thinks it might be time. He's no longer carrying the weight of gold that talks back, just memory, and a strange peace. He takes the boxes to the library wing, what remains of it anyway. Much of it collapsed after that ill-advised experiment involving levitating parchment and ancient whispering winds. He finds the strongest shelves, places the boxes there, side by side, labels them. To those who listen, to those who wait, to those who wonder. A historical side note, in the year 1394, a famous alchemist named Edor Blackchalk wrote a thesis titled The Silence of Finished Things. It argued that the most powerful spells were the ones never cast, that completion, real completion, didn't make noise. It didn't glow or shout or demand reward. It simply was. The alchemist smiles. Blackchalk would have approved of this moment. Back in the main chamber, the cauldron remains tucked beneath the stairs. Quiet, still, but no longer brooding. The river flows outside, gentle and soft. He sits at his desk one last time and opens a drawer lined with velvet. Inside, a single item remains. The coin. Yes, the coin. The one with the broken bridge on one side and the crowned skull on the other. He thought it vanished. Apparently not, but something is different now. It's cool to the touch. Unremarkable in weight. Just a coin. He turns it over, watching the morning light catch its edge. No whispers, no initials. Just two symbols he understands now. One side, what was, the other, what's possible. He places it into a small wooden box, locks it, not to hide it, to honor it. Then he opens the windows. All of them, lets the air in, lets the wind curl through the rafters, past the shelves, into the corners where dust has settled like doubts. And for the first time in decades, he breathes, not out of habit, but out of joy. A soft knock echoes from the entranceway. He wasn't expecting anyone. And yet, when he opens the door, no one is there, just a basket. No ritual, just light, and a chair, and the comfort of being still. Because some nights the gold you seek was never metal to begin with. It was quiet. It was truth. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it stays. The days pass. Not in the rushed, urgent way they used to, when each hour brought bubbling flasks, burning herbs or gold that tried to whisper back, but in the long, gentle stretch of time that only arrives once you've stopped waiting for something to explode. The alchemist begins to walk the castle grounds again. Slowly, leisurely, he takes paths once overgrown, now soft with moss and the subtle return of life. Grass grows where it shouldn't. Vines curl over stone walls like lazy cats. The river murmurs nearby, not chanting, not remembering, just flowing, as it should. One afternoon, he walks past the eastern tower and hears laughter, real laughter. Children. There are villagers again. He didn't notice them arrive. They must have crept in gradually, like the river healing itself. A cart now rattles up the hill once a week with root vegetables and coarse bread. He doesn't pick it, just nods at it. Cheeky, he says aloud. He returns to his workshop, which has begun to look less like a laboratory and more like a reading room with too many shelves. Scrolls and dried plants still crowd the edges, but the cauldron remains sealed and silent, tucked away beneath layers of respectful dust. One day, a courier arrives with a parcel tied in royal twine. The alchemist nearly sends it back unopened, but something about its weight, its humble weight, gives him pause. He opens it carefully. Inside, a small sealed bottle of ink, blue, the good kind, the kind that doesn't smudge, even if you cry over the page. And a note, asterisk. The king has abdicated. He's gone south. The river is no longer his to command. You were right. We were wrong. Do as you wish. P.S. The tooth fell out. It turned to dust. Asterisk. The alchemist chuckles. He places the bottle on the shelf between starling bone and night salt. He's not angry, not even smug, just glad. One evening, as dusk falls like a sigh, he takes the glass dome off the lead tray, the place where the coin had been. It's still empty, but now he notices something else. A line etched faintly into the tray's surface, as though the coin had left behind not just a memory but a map. It's not a place. It's a path, winding, complex. Circular. He traces it with his finger, wondering what it would lead to, if followed. His heart stirs, not with dread, with curiosity. Perhaps, he thinks, the work isn't quite done after all, not the kind of work that turns rot into gold, but the kind that turns knowledge into guidance. He begins to write again. Not recipes, not formulae, just reflections. He titles the new grimoire, Notes for the Next One. He writes slowly, sipping tea between sentences, occasionally watching the firelight curl against the window. He writes about the river, the cost of truth, the danger of blooms, the wisdom of cats who see without seeing, the pain of memory, the gift of memory. He leaves out the parts no one should repeat, but includes the warnings, especially the one about never naming the gold, not aloud, and not to the king. One night, a knock at the door. Not rushed, not desperate, just hopeful. A young woman, back straight, eyes wide, ink stains on her fingers. I heard you used to know things, she says, and I'd like to learn. He studies her, then gestures toward the chair by the fire. No fire tonight, he says, but the tea is warm. She smiles. It's a beginning. He pours 2 cups. Doesn't mention the cat. Doesn't mention the coin. Not yet. Let her find those parts herself. Outside, the river flows. Inside, knowledge simmers. And somewhere beneath the castle's bones, the last drop of golden memory settles into sleep. The girl, Her name is Mylan, though she admits she's never quite liked it. Visits again the next evening. Then the next. She reads quickly, writes slowly, and listens as if she's memorizing the walls. Her questions are sharp, but never cutting. She doesn't ask about gold, not once. That's how he knows she might be worth the teachings. The alchemist doesn't call her an apprentice. Not aloud, not even in his notes. Titles carry weight, binding weight, and this new chapter, whatever it is, needs to stay unbound, free to flow. Like the river outside that no longer hisses, still he watches, and she learns. She finds the old charts first, maps of the castle's original design, back when monks still roamed its pipes and scribbled warnings into grout between stones. She studies them obsessively. One morning, she presents him with a list: 7 sealed doorways, 3 collapsed stairs, 2 void chambers, 1 trapdoor with no handle. He grins. "Pick one," he says. She picks the trapdoor. Of course she does. It's beneath the western stair, hidden beneath barrels and old goat skins. He hasn't touched it in decades. Not since an experiment involving powdered rust, moonlight, and an unfortunate turnip. They clear the way. She studies the seam. "No handle," she murmurs, "but not sealed." He nods. "Weight locked." She blinks. "So?" He grins. "We add weight." They place an iron cauldron, empty atop the trapdoor. Nothing. She frowns, adds her boot. Still nothing. He steps forward, silent, and places one hand flat on the cauldron rim. Click. The trapdoor yawns open with a sigh, revealing a staircase that spirals down, not in stone but in bone, white, gleaming, polished by centuries of breath. They both stare. Mylan says, "We're not going down there tonight, are we?" "Of course not," he replies. "Tonight we're drinking soup and pretending we never saw this." They don't sleep much. Instead, they draw notes, diagrams, guesses. None of it fearful, just fascinated. She asks questions he never would have thought to ask, about the architecture of the cauldron, about whether the river has a seasonal memory, about why one of the alchemical circles includes the symbol for laughter, and whether that's a joke. He doesn't have answers for most of them, but he's never enjoyed not knowing more. One morning they find something peculiar at the edge of the old herb garden, a small gold coin, partially buried. Not the same as his, but similar. Same weight, same emblem, different initials. She holds it in her palm. "Someone else?" she asks. "Could be," he replies. "Could also be you." She furrows her brow. "I haven't done anything yet." He nods. "Maybe it's waiting." She pockets it without another word. Later, she draws it, carefully. By candlelight, sketches the broken bridge and the crowned skull. "Why a bridge?" she asks. He considers, because gold is a link. To what? To whatever comes after truth. That's how you know she's not just curious. She's hopeful. We'll need to be careful with that. One evening, while copying labels for jars, she finds the old silver sieve, the one that once caught the gold beads. She holds it up. "This?" she asks. He nods. "Important." He shrugs. "Only when something tries to rise." She turns it over, feels heavier than it looks. Most things worth remembering do. She sets it down gently, as if afraid it might remember too much. Outside, the wind stirs the vines creeping up the castle walls. Not urgently, just enough to remind the stone that time is still happening. Inside, the air thickens slightly, not with magic, but with continuity. They clean the workshop together, reorganize the shelves, alphabetize the strange, reclassify the unsortable. She insists on calling one section the maybe shelf. He lets her, because maybe that's what this all is now. A long shelf of possibilities. The cat with no eyes doesn't return. But once, just once, they hear something in the rafters. A soft thump, followed by the sound of something settling. He doesn't say anything. Neither does she, but they both leave out a saucer of cream that night. It's empty by morning. Autumn arrives like a polite guest. Cool evenings, rust-colored ivy, a fog that clings gently rather than chokes. The castle breathes easier in this season. It creaks less, sleeps more. Even the rats seem slower, lazier, as if they too are savoring the end of heat and the beginning of softness. The alchemist walks the halls now not as a solitary keeper of secrets, but as a man hosting something unfamiliar, possibility. Mylan has taken to the western tower. She's cleared the dust, lit candles, and filled it with maps, diagrams and strings, connecting theories across the walls, like spiderwebs woven from ink and sleepless nights. She's building something there, not physical, not yet, but a pattern, a structure of ideas. He doesn't interrupt her. Not much, just leaves things on her windowsill sometimes, a withered sprig of nightshade, a perfectly round pebble that hums faintly when wet, a spoon with a spiral cut into the handle. She always notices, always smiles. One afternoon, she calls him up to the tower. She's holding one of the maps from the old library, eyes wild with excitement. "Look," she says, "the spiral beneath the castle. It's not unique." She unrolls 3 more scrolls. Different castles, different rivers, same spiral, always beneath the foundations, always tied to water. She looks up. "What if the river didn't choose us?" He stares. "You think we chose the river?" "No," she says. "I think someone chose both." He doesn't have an answer, but he helps her pin the maps to the wall. They spend the next week tracing symbols, matching glyphs. Some repeat across continents. Others are unique but rhyme in form, visual cousins separated by errors. One sigil stands out. The spiral, yes, but inside it, a tiny mark. A seed. They find it carved on the underside of a monk's bell, etched faintly on the old cauldron's rim, pressed into the gold ring he returned to the river. A maker's mark. Or maybe a warning. Mylan begins calling it the origin glyph. He doesn't disagree. One night she presents a theory. The glyph isn't just a symbol, it's a circuit. He raises an eyebrow. To what? She points at the map. To them. Whoever put it there, he doesn't sleep well that night. Not from fear, from awakening. There's something exhilarating about not knowing where you are in the story, whether at the beginning or the end, or just a comfortable middle. He dreams of staircases made from bone again, but now they're blooming. Each vertebra cracks open like a seed pod, revealing gold dust inside. The next morning he finds Mylan asleep on her desk, surrounded by spirals. He covers her with a blanket. A simple act, but it feels sacred. Later, she shows him a brass compass she's rebuilt, not for direction, but for memory tracking, a kind of alchemic weather vane for lingering thought. She places it on the windowsill. It spins twice, points east, just for a moment, then stills. "Something's happening out there," she says. He nods. "Something's always happening," he replies. The trick is deciding when to notice. That evening they eat stew and argue about whether time is a circle or just a badly folded map. She says both. He says probably. The next day they return to the trapdoor, the one beneath the western stair, with its staircase of bone. They go down together this time. Lanterns lit, not afraid. At the bottom they find a second spiral, this one made of glass, smooth, unblemished, glowing faintly from within. Inside it, suspended like a drop of oil in water, floats a single gold bead, alive. Watching, neither of them speak. Mylan steps forward, places a hand gently on the glass. It doesn't react, but the bead moves, just slightly, just enough. She smiles, he nods, then they leave. They don't speak of it again for several weeks, not because they're scared, because they're waiting. "Must all answers hum before they arrive?" he replies in calmer ink. "All things hum, we just don't always listen. Gold is just memory that refuses to tarnish. Sometimes the silence is the answer." The spiral turns, the coin is quiet, and somewhere, beneath ink and ash and ancient echoes, the next layer waits. The mists return. Not with menace, those days are done, but with mystery. They roll in from the east, curling over the hills like shy animals rediscovering a home. The villagers say the fog smells sweeter now, like honey and clover, like something trying to forget it was ever sour. The alchemist watches from the high tower window, the one just above the old dovecote. He keeps a hand on the glass, warm tea in the other, and listens to the wind. It carries voices sometimes, not words exactly, but syllables, like someone almost singing your name in a dream. He knows better than to reply. Even so, he leans just a little closer. In the workshop below, Millen is sorting petals. It's become a kind of meditation for her. She insists that every dried bloom tells a story, not with colour, but with scent. She swears some still carry traces of thought. The honeysuckle whispers forgiveness. The poppies apologize for secrets they once overheard. He doesn't argue, not anymore, because lately he's been hearing names in the air. It started 3 days ago, softly. Just above the range of ordinary hearing, he thought it was memory playing tricks, leftover echoes from the river's tricks and gifts. But then Mylan said it too. I heard my brother's name, she told him one morning, rubbing sleep from her eyes. He's been dead 10 years, but the wind, it said it like he used to, like it knew. The alchemist nodded, and simply said, You're not alone. Now the names come every dusk. Not all at once. Just a few, spoken like questions. Elias, Sonara, Belvin. Some he knows, some he doesn't. But each one stirs something ancient and familiar, like a book you didn't know you'd read. That evening they go outside together. No lanterns, no cloaks, just scarves and questions. Then it happens again. The mist begins to speak. This time more clearly, not loud, but clear. A single phrase, the ones you've forgotten, are remembering you. Mylan's pen stops moving. The alchemist stares at the river. It hasn't changed. And yet, everything has. Because this isn't the river speaking. This is something through the river, something beneath it. He don't reply, but they listen. Until the mist fades, and the names stop. They return inside, no words between them, none needed. Back in the lab, the air tastes metallic, just faintly. He checks the cauldron, not the 7 metals one, still sealed beneath the stair, but the small copper one used for herbal infusions and experiments involving seasonal fungi. It's warm. No fire beneath it, just warmth. He lifts the lid. Inside, water, clear, still. Then, a shimmer, a ripple that moves against gravity, climbing the side of the pot. And from it, a single word appears etched briefly in steam. Lyra. The alchemist sits down, slowly. That name, he hasn't spoken it aloud in decades. Not since the drowning, not since the bloom. Millen sees the word and kneels beside him. She doesn't ask who Lyra was, she just writes it down, and then adds, the river is building something. That night, the spiral glows faintly in the chamber below. They descend together. The gold bead is still floating within the glass helix. But now, it's spinning. Slowly, rhythmically, like a compass needle caught between destinations. It pulses once, and then another voice, not a whisper, not a demand, speaks from within the spiral. She is almost home. They stay there for hours watching. The bead spins until it stops, points west, then sinks into the center of the spiral, and is gone. The next morning they find a puddle of water on the lab floor, shaped like a perfect spiral. It evaporates before they can sketch it. But they remember. Mylan adds another page to the grimoire. The mist carries names. The spirals carry paths. The water carries memories. We're not alone. We were never alone. The question now is not, what do we do? It's what do they want? That night, they dream the same dream, of a stairwell winding downward forever, of hands reaching up, not to drag them down, but to lift them through. When they wake, the cat with no eyes is sitting on the windowsill again. It doesn't move, just watches, and purrs, softly, like a lullaby, for something just beneath the surface. The cat with no eyes disappears again by morning. Not that they expected it to stay, it never did before. It arrives, observes, and vanishes, like thunder that never quite becomes lightning. But this time, it left something behind. A vial, small, tear-shaped, sealed with black wax and bound in copper wire. No label, no scent. Mylan finds it first, nestled in the crook of the windowsill where the cat had been. She turns it in her hands. It's warm. He takes it from her gently. The warmth isn't thermal, it's recognition. This isn't just an object. It's a memory, distilled and preserved. A technique whispered about in obscure alchemical scrolls and half-mad footnotes. Memory vitrification. The idea that an experience, if potent enough, could crystallize into a liquid too heavy to evaporate, too dense to forget. Very few believed it was possible. even fewer survive trying. He sets the vial on the table, and for a moment they both just stare. Then Mylan whispers, "Do we open it?" He considers. "No," he says, "we ask it first." And so they wait. The vial doesn't speak, not in the usual ways, but when the wind picks up, it begins to hum, soft, like a lullaby through cracked glass. Mylan leans in. "It's the same tune I heard in the spiral chamber." He nods. It's a response. He fetches the tuning fork, his oldest one, the one made from ore found in the meteor crater near Bell Shadow, and strikes it gently against the edge of the bench. He holds it close to the vial. Nothing. Then, resonance. The wax seal twitches. A bubble rises inside the glass and bursts, releasing the tiniest scent, salt water, and rosemary. He stiffens. That scent only ever meant one thing. Her, Lyra. Before he can stop himself, he breaks the wax and uncorks the vial. The scent floods the room. Not heavy, not artificial. Real, soft, like childhood and grief wrapped in sunlight. The liquid inside remains still, but the air around them changes, and from the vial's opening rises a shimmer. A ripple, a figure, transparent, glowing faintly blue, not quite a ghost, not quite a dream, but real enough to weep over. Lyra, his apprentice, his child, his mistake. She smiles. Not at him, but at Mylan. "Hello," she says. Her voice is quiet, but there. Mylan says nothing, just nods. The alchemist steps back, unsure if he should speak, if he's allowed, but Lyra turns to him. Her gaze is not forgiving, not punishing, just true. "You finished it," she says. He swallows hard. "No, I just stopped." "That's finishing," she says. A beat of silence. Then she lifts her translucent hand and touches his temple. No weight, just sensation. His breath catches. In that moment, he sees it all. Her fall into the river. The shimmer of the gold as it bloomed. The error in the calculation. The lie he told himself for years. And the truth he finally offered. She steps back, smiles again. The river remembers, she says, but it doesn't hold grudges. And then she begins to fade. Mylan reaches out, but stops herself. Lyra nods at her, then turns to the alchemist one last time. "Don't brew alone anymore," she says. "You don't have to." Gone. The vial cracks. Empty now. Nothing left inside but cool glass. They sit in silence for a long while. Then Mylan says, "So, she was, yes, and she forgave you." He shakes his head. "She understood, that's harder." They seal the cracked vial in a velvet pouch and hang it in the rafters, not as a relic, not as a relic, not as a warning, as a reminder that some truths, when spoken aloud, don't destroy you, they set you free. That night, they return to the spiral chamber. The glass helix still sits at the center, but now the gold bead has returned. It hovers in the middle. Ancient, and then, on the far side, a door opens. No hinges, no sound, just opportunity. Mylan glances at him. He raises an eyebrow. After you, they step through, together, into whatever memory the river left behind for them, not as alchemist and apprentice, but as witnesses to a past that wanted remembering, to a future still waiting to be named. The doorway leads not into a hall, nor another chamber, but into light, warm, pale, not blinding. No, this isn't the harsh flare of magic or punishment, but a soft glow like candlelight reflected off bone china. It feels alive. Their boots don't make a sound on the floor, though they're certain they're still walking. The walls, if you could call them that, are smooth and luminous, spiraling outward like the inside of a seashell carved by time and truth. They don't speak. Not yet. They just move forward. And then the corridor opens into something vast, a library, but not of books, not shelves, not paper. Each volume is a drop of liquid suspended mid-air, gently glowing, dozens, hundreds, thousands. Each drop pulses softly, and as they pass near one, they feel it, memories, ancient and new, brushing against their minds like curtains in a summer breeze. A child's laughter, a mother's hands, a battlefield soaked in regret. A song hummed beneath floorboards. Every drop is a memory, preserved. Mylan whispers, "Is this The river's archive. The alchemist says, voice reverent, I've read about this. I never believed it. But why us? A beat passes, then a voice, not from a speaker, not from any one place, replies, because you listened. The words pass through them, not merely into their ears, they feel it in their ribs, their teeth. A nearby memory drop flutters. The alchemist steps closer. It shows a village, one he doesn't recognize. A child leads a goat by a string through waist-high grass. The sun is soft, low on the horizon. Then the wind shifts, the grass bends, and he realizes it's the same wind that's been brushing through his castle grounds for weeks. He steps back. Another drop drifts toward Mylan. She touches it. Instantly she gasps. Her eyes flicker with distant images. Her brothers laugh, the scent of their home, the first time she looked up at the stars and thought, I want to know why. The memory fades. She wipes her eyes. It's ours, she whispers. But not just ours, the voice returns. This is what the gold was meant to be. They look around. The alchemist nods slowly. Not treasure, not currency, but memory solidified. He speaks carefully. So, this was the purpose of the process? The voice hums, a sound like rain in a bell tower. Once, then forgotten, then perverted, then mourned. Mylan frowns. Spirals again. Each spiral leads to a small platform, gently pulsing with light. One spiral begins to glow a little brighter. Their spiral, an invitation. They step forward. The platform lifts. No wind, no movement. And yet suddenly they are elsewhere, still inside the spiral. But now, above it, looking down at it all. A spiral of spirals. A world built from memory and regret and joy and choice. The alchemist places a hand over his heart. It's not a vault, he murmurs. It's a body, a thinking one. Mylan breathes slowly, and we're part of it now. The voice responds again, softer this time. You always were, but now you've remembered. They descend again, gently. The drops return to stillness. The room calms. They've seen enough, not everything, but enough to carry. A new door forms behind them, solid, wooden, plain, the kind of door you could knock on. They glance at each other. Mylan touches the handle. The moment she does, all the memory drops blink, like stars winking out, then returning, one at a time. A single phrase forms across them, letter by glowing letter. Keep the river honest. She smiles. I can do that. They step through the door. And just like that, they're back in the castle. But something's changed. The spiral chamber is darker now, calmer. But on the stone floor, etched as if carved by moonlight, is a perfect circle of script. Neither recognizes the language, but both understand it. And in the center, the gold bead. For companionship, they each reach down, place their palms on either side of it. It pulses once, then splits, not violently, generously. Bead becomes thread, thread becomes line. A map begins to draw itself across the stone. Points, junctions, river paths. Not just their river. All rivers, all spirals. The alchemist breathes deeply. You see it? He whispers. Mylan nods. They are all connected. He nods back, and maybe they always were. They follow the map to the next point. It stops at a simple mark. Not awkward silence, comfortable. A silence with roots. A silence that doesn't beg to be filled. The kind you earn after you've both stood in a room full of suspended memories and walked out still breathing. They study the etched map again. The crescent moon symbol glows faintly now, only visible when viewed through the gold-threaded bead that split in the spiral chamber. Held like a lens, the bead reveals a trail, not a straight path, but a winding one that loops back on itself, dives through old corridors, brushes the library's spine-ridden wall, and ends in the east wing, where the castle once held its apprentice dormitories, long abandoned, collapsed in places. Of course, they follow the line, the bead tucked inside Mylan's palm, warm as a stone pulled from sunlit sand. The east wing groans beneath their boots, wooden beams long since warped by damp seasons and time's casual cruelty. Ivy splits through cracks in the mortar, and dust falls in curtains as they pass beneath the faded arches. The final door is smaller than expected. Plain, oak, old hinges. No sigils, But above it, carved into the lintel, is the crescent moon, subtle, half swallowed by rot and lichen. They clear it gently, brushing the shape clean with calloused hands and reverent fingers. Ready? Mylan asks. The alchemist nods. She pushes. It swings open without resistance, and inside, a room full of gold. Not coins, not treasure, not that kind of gold. This is gold shaped like language, like thought, scrolls, tapestries, tools, each glinting not with wealth but with purpose. A workshop, no dust, no mold, as if it had waited, sealed in time, untouched by the rot outside, and in the center, a table. Upon it rests a single object. Then the eye on the book blinks, once, then closes again. Mylan gasps. The alchemist merely bows, because he knows what this is. I've heard stories, he says, of books that witness. Not written, not copied, just grown. She nods. I think this one is alive. The voice returns. Not spoken aloud, not audible. Inside them, the spiral is a question. This is the answer. The book opens itself. Pages flutter like wings. Inside, not words, but moments. Still frames, glimpses, like dream photographs pinned to a wall. One page shows a child dropping a pebble into a gold-colored puddle. Another, a city under glass, rivers of light flowing through its veins. Another, the two of them, standing just as they are now in this room looking at this book. Mylan looks up sharply. We're in it. The alchemist breathes slowly, because we answered it. The book flips again, faster now. The pages reveal what could be. Paths not yet walked. Moments that shimmer with maybe. A village built over spiral springs. A school where children learn to listen to water. A world where rivers carry memory, not as burden but as guidance. She reaches for the page showing the school. Her finger hovers. The page pulses beneath it. Then, from the back of the room, a sound, footsteps, but not human. Soft, like fabric dragging over stone. They turn, and from the shadows, the cat with no eyes steps into the light. It's larger now, taller. Its fur glows faintly, like candlelight seen through fog. It says nothing, does nothing, but carries a vial in its mouth. It approaches the table, leaps lightly onto the book, places the vial beside it, and vanishes. This vial is different from the last. Inside, liquid gold, but clearer, brighter. And it doesn't pulse with memory, it pulses with intention. The book closes, not rudely, just finished. On its front, the spiral has changed. Now within it is a door. They don't know what lies beyond it, not yet. But the vial glows steadily, casting soft rings of light across the table. A voice, again, not heard, but known, whispers, "This is not the end. This is your permission." And just like that, the map in their minds redraws. Another crescent, another chamber, another tomorrow. The spiral has opened wider, and they are still inside it. They leave the chamber in silence, the vial carefully wrapped in velvet and tucked into Mylan's satchel. Neither of them speaks on the walk back. There's no need. When words fail, and they often do at moments like this, the spiral speaks for them. Back in the workshop, the castle breathes around them. A floorboard creaks above, though no one is there. The wind rattles a bone chime near the hearth, but doesn't ring it. Somewhere behind the walls, the river sighs softly through the old pipes, like an exhale. The alchemist unrolls the great canvas map, the one they've been adding to for weeks. He spreads it on the work table, smoothing out the curled corners and adjusting the stones used to hold it down. They stand over it together, gazing down at the tangle of lines, spirals, inked glyphs, and strange shapes whose meanings they've yet to decode. Every moment they've lived, every chamber visited, every truth faced, it's all there. Now a new mark, a golden bead. We've never seen that symbol, where the bead stops. It doesn't form another spiral. Instead, it draws a circle, nested inside an open crescent. She leans in. A cradle, the alchemist rubs his chin, or a mouth. The bead stops glowing, but the message is clear. Another chamber. Another thread. I thought we were done, Mylan murmurs. Spirals don't end, the alchemist says. They widen. They decide not to wait. They pack light. 2 satchels, 3 flasks, memory salt, and a fresh page from the grimoire. Mylan wears her long coat, its mirrored thread catching the light like droplets. The alchemist brings nothing magical, only a graphite pencil and a leather strap bound around his wrist, his first apprentice's braid. They follow the golden trail westward, out of the spiral chamber, through the deep halls, past the silent armory, and a corridor with broken sunstones where the light always bends wrong. The trail leads beneath the old observatory into a tunnel of thick stone, long neglected. Vines have slipped through cracks, roots have burst through mortar. Time has left its signature here in silence. At the tunnel's end, a door, smooth, pale. Unlike the others, this one is warm, almost breathing. They feel it before they touch it, alive, not dangerous, just awake. Mylan places her palm flat against the center. It opens, soundlessly, into a room unlike any other. It isn't a chamber. Mylan sits across from her. We were told to come. Avon gestures toward the fountain. Then you listened well. That's all the spiral ever wanted. The alchemist watches the water arc and rejoin itself. You waited a long time, he says. Avon nods. I became part of the waiting. That's how spirals keep shape, by those who remember the curve. She reaches into her chest, not with pain but reverence, and draws out a small orb of light, a bead. It pulses once, then floats to Mylan. Mylan doesn't flinch. She lifts her hand. The bead hovers above her palm, then sinks gently into her skin. It doesn't burn, it joins, and her eyes fill with understanding. I see now, she whispers. It wasn't gold we were chasing. From violet to dawn blush. Then, they're back, standing once again in the spiral chamber. Everything looks the same, except now the walls aren't stone, they're liquid mirror, reflecting not their faces, but moments, from their journey, from before, from possible futures. Mylan sees herself teaching children how to listen to river currents. The alchemist sees a wide table of apprentices, each drawing their own spiral, none the same. They look at each other. He smiles. So he says gently, "What now?" She breathes slowly. "We build," and in the center of the chamber, the gold bead, no longer inert, spins one last time. It rises, flickers, and vanishes, leaving behind only light. No flash, no thunder, no parting skies or shaking earth, just a hush, a deep, complete quiet that settles in the bones. The kind of silence you don't want to break, the kind you carry for the rest of your life. They remain in the chamber for a long time. There's nothing left to see, but everything has changed. The walls, once alive with mirrored glyphs and breathing stone, are plain again, cold, rough, aged. The spiral is no longer lit, just etched lines, now dull, now complete. And yet, something lingers, a warmth in the floor beneath their boots, a weightless pressure in the air, like an exhale not quite finished, like a presence politely bowing before leaving the room. Mylan walks to the center of the chamber, where the bead had last hovered. There's now a mark, simple, honest, not a spiral, a circle, no frills, no flare, just a closed, perfect line. Whole. She crouches, fingertips grazing the mark. It's done. The alchemist stands beside her, arms folded loosely across his chest. It's begun. She raises an eyebrow. You're not going to give me one moment of satisfaction, are you? He chuckles. Just making sure you don't fall into the trap. Completion doesn't mean conclusion. Right. The spiral widens, not ends.
Exactly.
They leave the chamber slowly. No dramatic exit, no music, no applause. Just two people who finally finished something honestly. The door seals behind them, a soft sigh of stone against stone. Nothing final, just closed. They return to the workshop. The old space looks familiar again. It has the shape of life in it now, less like a sanctum, more like a home. Dust speckles the high corners. A cracked tile near the hearth has somehow grown a sprout. A forgotten bowl of berries has fermented just enough to be considered accidental wine. The spiral map lies untouched on the table, but the gold ink has dried. No more glowing lines. No more beads, just paths, drawn, followed, and remembered. Mylan rolls it up gently and places it in a wide tin tube, sealing it with a riverstone cap. I want to keep it. The alchemist nods. It's yours. They spend the following weeks clearing, not abandoning, but choosing what stays. They keep the grimoire but set it in the open, available to anyone curious enough to read. They plant herbs again by the east window. The jars of memory salt are moved to lower shelves, reachable by smaller hands. People begin to return. Not many, not all at once, but they come. A cartwright with a song stuck in his head. A boy who dreamed of a river that spoke in riddles. A baker who lost her sense of taste but claimed she could smell regret in bread that rose too fast. The castle becomes a quiet place of study again. Not alchemy in the old sense, but listening, feeling, learning what the river wants to remember and what it's willing to forget. They never seek gold again, not the boiling kind, not the gleaming, melting, hoarding kind. They seek stories, they ask questions, they draw spirals in chalk and leave them in villages as quiet invitations. Come ask with us. The cat with no eyes visits sometimes, less often now. It doesn't bring anything, it simply watches from the beams, tail twitching with silent approval. One night, long after the last candle has gone out, and the last visitor has found a bedroll near the hearth, the alchemist walks alone beneath the moonlight. He doesn't wear his long coat anymore. His hair is thin, his stride slower, but his eyes still sharp, still listening. He stops by the old south gate, where the spiral once began, a place now covered in ivy and soft moss. The crescent moon above him glows low and warm. He closes his eyes, and he hears it, faint, but there, we remember. He smiles, whispers, good. The next morning, Mylan finds a small note on his bench. It reads, when the gold is memory, it must be passed, not owned. I am not gone, I'm simply quieter now. She doesn't cry, she places the note in the grimoire. Later that week, a new page appears. She didn't write it. No one did. It doesn't glow, it doesn't hum, but it waits, and so the river quiets. The castle breathes, and deep beneath its many floors, beneath stone and root and time itself, the spiral rests. Not ended, spirals don't end. They fold, they breathe, they settle, they widen. It waits there now, gentle and complete, for a while. Perhaps for a long while, or perhaps not long at all, because spirals are patient but not passive. They do not knock loudly at your door. They do not burst into your life shouting revelation. No, they hum, they nudge, they curl into thought like warm tea in your chest, and when the time is right, they unfurl. The alchemist's chamber remains. The cauldron is clean. The bench beside the hearth is warm from the afternoon sun, though no one sat there today. Somewhere in the garden, bees drift lazily between the rosemary and poppies, their wings vibrating in a slow, rhythmic spiral of their own. The spiral lives on, not in gold, not even in books, but the memory, preserved gently, shared freely, trusted with care. The cat with no eyes still visits. It does not age, though the world around it does. When it curls up on the high beam above the grimoire shelf, it flicks its tail once before stilling completely. No meow, no purr, but presence. That's enough. You may be wondering now, what happened to the last vial, the one that pulsed not with memory, but with intention? In the thoughts that circle back at night, in the habits you return to, the dreams you revisit, the gentle curiosity that brought you here in the first place. That too is part of the spiral. You probably didn't know that, or maybe you did and just needed reminding, which is fine. Spirals are patient. They don't mind repeating themselves. So now, let the story settle in your chest. Let your thoughts slow, not because they must, but because they're safe to. Let the questions you still hold drift for now, unanswered, but not ignored. They'll come back if they need to. Or they'll spiral into something new. The gold is gone, but it was never meant to stay, because when gold lingers too long, it forgets how to change, and memory, true memory, wants to move. So tonight, sleep like someone who has walked through chambers of truth. Sleep like someone who has felt a spiral curl around their thoughts and come out the other side softer. Let your eyes close slowly. Let your limbs sink. Let the hum of the river return. Not loud, not urgent. Just there, just yours. Because the alchemist is gone now. Not gone in mourning, gone in becoming, and the question has been answered, not with noise or glory, but with a whisper, we remember. So, sleep now, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Let your breath follow the pattern of a spiral, in and out, round and gentle and safe. And if you dream of a cat with no eyes, or a book with a blinking cover, or a door carved with a crescent moon, just know you're exactly where you should be. Good night.